Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Becoming You podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the 5 of the most common parenting myths or mistake that I see people make over and over again, especially when it comes to, when I work with my clients, because that's where I get exposed to what my clients think and believe that really hinders them from being the parents that I know that they can be. So let's kick it off. I'm going to keep it short and sweet and get to the point today because I have a ton of other stuff I need to be getting to. So number 1, it's this idea of I have to please and keep my child happy all the time, or otherwise, I'm failing at my job as a parent or I'm doing something wrong as a parent. And this idea comes from, I think, when we are young parents, when we've just had babies, it's very easy to do that, right? A child cries and we can immediately comfort them by either changing their diaper or feeding them. We immediately silence their pain, their suffering, their cries. And we have maybe 1 or 4 or 5 things that we can try. And there is an immediate gratification of they suffer, I provide, I please them. And we get this cycle of just feeling really needed, and we feel fulfilled from being needed and being able to provide something, their fundamental needs. Now, as our kids get older, those dynamics start to change and our kids start to pull away from us. Now, I'm mother to now a tween and an almost teen. He's about to turn 13 this year. Oh my God, I can't even believe I'm saying that. And, because we've gotten accustomed to giving them what they need, provide what they need, we get into this role of if they're not happy all the time, then I'm doing something wrong, something's off, right? Because we want our kids to be happy. We don't want them to hurt. We don't want them to suffer. And what that creates is this incredible pressure on us as parents to never let anything go wrong. And the older they get, the more things that are out of our locus of control. When they are babies, we have so much control over their lives because their sphere, their life is very, very protected. It's literally in a bubble, right? But as they start going to elementary school and middle school, they're exposed to so many things that we don't even have visibility to a lot of times, right? As involved as you can be in their life, there are just certain things that you cannot protect or safeguard our kids from. Just to give you an example, my kids went ice skating yesterday, my 9-year-old and my 12-year-old. And they went to the boys' locker room to change after because they were drenched in sweat. And I, as a mom who took them, cannot go into the boys' locker room with them, right? And so we're driving home and my 12-year-old goes, "Man, I've never heard so much swearing in my life." And I go, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, there was a bunch of 16-year-old kids in the locker room and they just swore up and down." And I was like, "Oh, really?" I said, "What words did they use?" And he said the F word, the S word, the J word. He went on, right? And not only did my 12-year-old heard this, my 9-year-old did too. Not that they are, super innocent kids that have never heard this word before, but swearing is just not something that we do in our home. No judgment on other families that do, but it's just not something that we encourage in our home. And I tell my 12-year-old all the time, I am sure you use these words when you're around with your friends, which I'm not thrilled about, but there's nothing I can do about it. But as long as you're under our roof and in the presence of your dad and me and our relatives and our friends, you will never speak in that way, right? So there are some clear boundaries. It's not like I'm sticking my head in the sand, but I'm also very aware of things that I can control and cannot control. But going back to my original point, there is just so much out of our control as parents when our kids start to get older and pull away from us and start to exert their independence and start to push their boundaries. So as a parent, if you believe that your job is to keep your child as happy as possible all the time, you're really not living in reality because there is no way that you can expect your kids to be happy all the time. Because if you're expecting that of your kids, I want to know whether you expect that of yourself. Do you expect to be happy all the time? And a lot of the stress that we feel in life is when we go through hard emotions and difficult times in life, if we have this expectation of I should be happy all the time, no wonder we are suffering, because a lot of human suffering is caused by variations to our expectations. So a lot of times we have to adjust our expectations, which is to say that to experience a range of human emotions is very, very normal. And instead of trying to keep my kids happy all the time, how about I help support them through their difficult emotions, right? So it's always a reflection of what's going on internally. How we parent our children is always, always an internal reflection of what's going on inside of you. So I want you to examine, is there a subtle pressure that I place on myself to always be joyful or happy, or when I'm not feeling happy or joyful or content or peaceful, do I place judgment on myself for feeling otherwise, right? Am I always looking for an answer or a fix to start to feel better? Now that's human. It's normal to want to feel better. I'm not saying stay in the unhappy place, but let's take away the judgment, right? So with your kids, when you put the pressure on yourself to please them all the time, there's always also an internal conflict that begins to happen, because let's say they want something like super expensive, or not even super expensive, like they just want stuff all the time, which all kids do. You go to Target, they want something. You go to Walmart, they want something. You go, like you're on Amazon website shopping for something for the house, and my kid comes along, he's like, I want this toy, right? And I have to gently say no and set that boundary. And immediately he's happy, because he's someone that feels emotions intensely, and he can go from feeling a 10 to a 1 because I said no to a random toy he wanted on Amazon. So if I was somebody who was, feeling pressured, not even pressured, or this mild guilt of I have to keep my child happy all the time. Maybe you grew up in a household where you didn't get the things that you want all the time. You were denied it, right? To an extreme. And so part of your wound would trigger the need in your child to want all the things. And I've often come across, clients, family households where the spouses are at complete conflict with one another, where one parent wants to give them all the things and cave in, and the other parent is like, no, we can't do that. And it creates a lot of conflict. So not that either parenting is wrong, but the need to always have your child be happy is driven from a need like within you. It really has nothing to do with your child, and it has everything to do with you. And it's important to examine the deeper need of, why do I feel like I need to keep my child happy all the time? What does it mean about me if they are sad or struggling or they've been hurt and I can't fix it, right? If we just take off that role, that invisible pressure that you place on yourself to making them happy all the time, and instead shift your role to, I'm somebody who needs to support my child through challenging times, it's going to make parenting a whole lot easier and a lot less complicated and a lot less conflicting within yourself, because we all know you don't want to keep buying them that $35 or $20 toy each time they ask for it, because you want to teach them value of $1, and that we don't need all the material stuff to be happy, right? So number 2, believing that all conflict with your child is bad. There are a lot of, every family fights, right? And I used to be one of those people who, when I had a fight with my child, I'd feel like, oh my gosh, as a family, like if anyone looked in on us right now, what would they think? Right. And that came tinged with more guilt and shame about, what kind of a parent am I, yelling at my kids? And what I've come to now realize is that through the healing process that I myself have gone through, is that conflict can be a really, really good thing if we know how to use it. And today, yes, I'm not always my best self with my kids. Yes, I still do yell at my kids. Yes, there are times when I do lose my cool and my patience, and I maybe act in ways that I'm not proud of. But what I have now found is that I can use conflict to repair my relationship in a really productive way, and actually use conflict to bring us even closer, right? So examples of this is recently, I'm just trying to think. Like apologizing to my kids comes really easily when I make mistakes. Not like a surface level apology, but like, when you have misunderstood things or jumped to conclusion and you're snippy with your kids, or you give them what you think is constructive feedback, but is actually not that constructive and it's kind of hurtful to them. And my kids call me out on it, or especially my 13-year-old, I run into this quite often. He'll be like, no, that's not what I said. And then I go, you're right. I wasn't listening. I wasn't present. I'm really sorry for how I made you feel, right? That is a present apology. And what I'm modeling there is that not all of us can show up as our best selves, and even parents mess up and we can be childish just like them. But through genuine apology and being present and being open to feedback, like that's normal. It's human. And I'm modeling how to apologize when we mess up, which messing up is normal, right? That's what we're modeling to our kids. And if you believe that all conflict with my child is bad, that, goes back to the number one thing, which is my job is to keep my child happy at all times. If you believe that, then you're going to believe this, that all conflict with my kids is bad. It means that I'm messing up or they're messing up and we're broken as a family. I want to normalize that conflict is normal in every relationship, with friendship groups, with your, romantic relationships, and with your children. Conflict is normal because we are humans and we have different opinions and values and world perspectives. And when we all live under one roof, we're all going to be like irritable, angry. We're not always going to be our best selves. So instead of trying to avoid conflict and look at it as a bad thing, how can we reframe it and use it to bring us closer, right? You learn to have really effective, open communication. And you start to realize that conflict is created because we operate from fear. And how often can we switch from living in a space of fear to moving into love? Because when we apologize, we are moving into a space of love and saying, you are me, I am you, I'm sorry, I hurt you. I feel the pain that you are feeling, right? I caused you harm. We're moving into a space of love when we apologize to people that we have unknowingly hurt. And when the other thing that happens is, if you believe that, all conflict is bad, I find that a lot of my clients find it really hard to maintain boundaries with their children. And they send really confusing signals. So, around screen time, around food, around a lot of it is always around screen time. A lot of my parents struggle with that, as do we. And what I have found is that these boundaries are hard to maintain because as parents, we give in. We give in when there is conflict. Because let's say, my own example, like my kids are allowed up to 2 hours of screen time on the weekend. So they split it up. They get like an hour in the morning and they get an hour in the evening. And always, they'll always say, can I have 5 more minutes? Can I have 10 more minutes? Can I have 15 more minutes? And in the beginning, or a while back, we were saying yes, because we were like, because, the drama that comes with having to turn off the screen when they're in the middle of a computer game or they're talking to a friend or whatever, they're just having so much fun and they're not quite ready to transition, right? So because my 9-year-old just comes with so much drama, we don't want to face the drama a lot of times. So we used to give in. And then soon it became such a power struggle to get them to turn it off at all. And so we started getting into like nagging and fighting. And then it would just spiral into shouting and consequences of losing screen time because they've just gone overboard with it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I realized that my kids pushed and pushed and pushed because they found there was always a breaking point. And we had set that breaking point. We hadn't set a clear boundary where they learned that once that timer goes off, that it means off. Like we were the ones who had set the pattern and the template to say, you know what, maybe I can ask. So they used to ask once and it became a yes. And then they used to ask 3 times and it became a yes. And then had to become 10 times. And we said yes. So now that's why the power play started, right? They knew there's a breaking point. So in order to maintain good boundaries, like if you don't like conflict, it's going to be really hard to maintain boundaries. So when I realized, like it's what I'm doing that's causing all of this conflict. So now when the timer goes off, I am very clear. I'm like, nope, you get to turn it off. And is there drama? Of course. But I maintain my composure and I don't let the drama get to me. And I go, I'm sorry, those are the rules, right? And just let it be. Like, we don't address the nagging. We don't address the drama. We just let it go. And I go, I know it's really hard to turn it off. Like, we address the emotion, but we don't address the drama. I acknowledge the emotion, but I don't get into the drama, right? So when you start to be okay with conflict and when you start to realize my job is not always to make my child happy, setting boundaries becomes really easy and maintaining them becomes really easy. Number 3, I have to change my child. I don't need to change myself to bring harmony into my home. As you know, and the idea is that, my parenting doesn't need to be reflected upon or corrected. We all stumble into parenting. Nobody teaches us how to parent. We take our templates and our framework for parenting based on what our parents did or didn't do, right? Oftentimes it's like, my parents did that and I was okay, so I'm going to do more of it. Or my parents did this or these aspects of parenting, which I absolutely hated. So I'm going to swing the other way and not do that at all. Right? That's how most of us parent. And so what we're really doing is taking our framework from what our parents did and didn't do, and we never ever examine for ourselves, how do I want to parent if I want to start on a blank slate? We don't have that. We never think that. So a lot of times we assume that if there is conflict or if things are not going well in the parent-child relationship, like we are being disrespected. Our kids just are not grateful for what we provide for them. We give them so many opportunities and all they have to do is do their chores and go to school. Like, life is so easy, right? We always tend to look at their life through our lens and our perspective and assume that if only my child would do this, 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 and this, like they need to change, right? And we just don't ever that maybe we need to change too. Because we are grown as adults, we are set in our ways. We just want our kids to change. And here's the thing. It is impossible to change other people. Impossible. You have zero control over it. All we can do is change us. We can change our attitude. We can change our habits, our actions, our behaviors, our thoughts, our beliefs. And as we do that, it is miraculous and magical how the reality around us changes. A lot of times your parenting will intuitively change, not from reading parenting books or anything like that. Of course, there are tools and techniques that you can apply, but it becomes a hell lot easier to apply those tools and strategies if, one, you start to apply it to yourself, and 2, ask yourself, like, all the things that trigger me about my kids, like the things that set me off, that make me see red, or the things that really get under my skin, or my pet peeves around what my kids do. If you really slow down and look at it, you can always trace it back to something within you. Always. The wound is within you, which is why you're being triggered. Like, your values are being obstructed, right? Or not respected. The wound of like, man, I listen, I tell my kids all the time what to do, and they just never listen. My kids don't ever listen, right? That might be true, but it is a symptom of something deeper that's going on within you where you often feel unheard. It comes from the wound of, I'm never heard. People never respect what I want. And so when your kids behave in that way, it's like a deep, deep scar and an itch that just keeps getting irritated all the time. So yes, you need to work on setting better boundaries with your children, which is why it feels like they're not listening, right? You have to repeat yourself. But you also have to work on the inner child wound of, I'm never listened to, or my voice is always suppressed, or my voice is never heard, right? Like we have to address that wound in your inner child and help her heal it and help her use her voice more often and help her feel heard. And the more you work on that, guess what's going to happen? It's going to become easier to instill boundaries. It's going to become easier to tell your kids no or yes and have it stick. Okay, so this is how it works. So a lot of times people believe parenting is about changing your child. And that's why parenting feels like such a struggle and an uphill battle and exhausting and draining, because changing somebody else is all of that. But when we start to look at, it's a balancing act of what do I need to change within myself before I work on looking at habits and behaviors that I can change in my children or having a conversation about them with what's going on. We always have to reflect and correct and heal ourselves before working on it with our kids. And parenting becomes so easy because we start to heal our unworthiness wounds. So much of parenting is done from a place of fear and feeling unworthy. And no matter what our kids do or don't do, like when you come from that space, it's very hard to create change. So myth number 3, let's bust that. I have to change my child. I don't need to change myself. 100% no. You have to begin with changing yourself because that is the easiest part to control. And then changing or helping influence change. You can never change someone. You can influence change. Helping influence change within your child or helping them see things differently becomes a whole lot easier. Here's what I found to be true. You cannot change your children, but you can absolutely help them see things differently and help them make the change themselves, right? So one of the things that my 13-year-old, almost 13-year-old has started doing is we realized that a lot of times he's reading his Kindle while he's eating like an after school snack, or when we're driving in the car, he's often like drinking water while he's reading his Kindle. His phone, those are like his 2 downfalls, right? And what I've noticed is that he also he has a sugar addiction, which we're trying to curb. And the other day I got him this huge cookie from Crumble Cookies, and he was watching a movie and he ate through the whole thing. Now that is a ton of sugar, and I let it happen knowingly because I wanted to help him see the lesson, right? If I'd come from a place of fear of, oh my God, sugar is so bad, I'd be a bad mom letting my child eat all the sugar. Like I would have policed it. That's normally what I would do. And I would have been like, here's half a cookie. You can eat some today. You can eat some tomorrow, whatever, right? That would have been me controlling, policing it. Great. Works for the short term. I have appeased my fear of I'm a good mom because I control the amount of sugar. But ultimately, what I want to teach him is that like awareness around how much are you eating? And is this a good thing to eat so much sugar in one go? Now, I know for a fact that if he hadn't been watching a movie while eating that cookie, he wouldn't have eaten it all that much. He would have been present with his body and with his taste buds and realized, oh, I don't want to eat all the sugar. My 9-year-old, on the other hand, only ate like 1/3 of it and gave the rest back. And I was like, I'm done. So he was aware, but my 13-year-old needs some coaching around it. So I had a conversation with him after, because, for me, I've worked a lot on my inner child and I can empathize with him. So there was no judgment on my part. All I wanted was to help him see and bring awareness to his habits. So we had a conversation around how when we are with some other device, we are not present with our bodies. So with his consent, we talked about, what's a good rule to put in place, which is when I'm eating anything or drinking anything, I cannot be with my Kindle or my phone. I need to be present with the food. Once I'm done, I can go back to the screen. Now, he was very reluctant about it, but he's agreed to it. And so now whenever I notice him defaulting to his habits, I gently call him out and I go, hey, buddy, you're on a screen. Remember what we talked about? And then he immediately puts the Kindle away. So there is zero judgment, right? Now, if you are someone who has struggled with food and who's struggled with body image issues and shaming around it, now this could be a very difficult task for you. for me personally, there's like no shame around food or anything like that. So for me to coach my kid around this, it becomes super there's no drama around it, right? So we have to be aware of like, where are we emotionally charged in life around certain areas when it comes to parenting? For me, it's not around food. For me, I'm trying to think of what does it used to be. I've done so much work on healing my inner child, and just for me, it's really about like intense emotion. So with my 9-year-old, that really used to trigger me, where he would go from like a 10 to a 1. And that was just jarring to me. And for me, what's also triggering is I'm very sensitive to like noise and loud noises. And I find myself asking my kids a lot of times to like turn it down, right? To please take it downstairs to the basement or take it upstairs to your bedroom. And I try really hard to not shut it down altogether, but gently ask them to move it to a different space. So those are the things that really trigger me at this present moment. All right. So number 4, this assumption, the mistake that we make is that as a parent, we always know what's best for our child. And I simply tell them like what to do in any given situation, and they just need to listen, right? Because I have more life experience, more wisdom, more knowledge. I've made more mistakes, and I just know how life works, right? And the idea of like, I've gone through all of this, I just know what's best for them. I have so many clients whose spouses feel this way, right? The dads, like, I just know what's best for my child. Like, they just need to listen. And it goes back to the previous idea of like, there's nothing that I need to change about me or the way I parent. Like, I know what's best. I am immovable. I am unflexible. Nobody ever likes to say that, but that's what's happening. And so the underlying assumption here is that our kids really don't know anything, and they can't be trusted with decisions. And like, they just need to listen to me. Now, this is a little bit of an extreme take, but there's a spectrum on this. And a lot of times we teach our kids to mistrust themselves because the decision they come up with, we might not agree with, but we will do it in a way where we cause them doubt. Like, really? Right. It's different to weigh the pros and cons of their decision and make sure that they're really clear on how each one plays out. But ultimately is to say, hey, like, if you feel this is what is best for you, like, I trust you, right? So for instance, I have a client that I work with. She is just about to go to college. And it was a difference of, she's going off to college. Do I room with someone that I already know because there are lots of kids from her school that are going to this university, or do I room with a completely brand new person? And she went back and forth and back and forth. And finally she made her decision, and her parents do not agree with her decision, right? And that's fair. They're entitled to their opinion, but she had grown so much over the time that we've been working together that she fully trusts her decision. In the past, she would have been swayed by what her parents maybe wanted her to do, or she was scared of making the wrong decision. Like, obviously my parents know better. And so she would have maybe done what they needed her to do to make them happy, right? Because her parents are her everything. She doesn't want to, and she totally trusts them, as she should, because they have given her everything to thrive. But this time she made a different decision. She herself walked through the pros and cons of each choice, and she was okay to make her choice. Like, she was fully in her power and she said, this is what I choose to do. And that's ultimately what we want our kids to do. And she actually said the words, you know what, even if I make a mistake and regret it, it's my mistake to make and regret. Like, I would have known that I'm the one who made that choice, right? And that is so empowering, like, to know that I made this choice and I'm okay with it, even if it sucks. That's what we want to get to, because that's emotional resilience. That's self-trust. So we don't always know what's best for our kids because they have their own spirit. They have their own journey. And as parents, instead of saying, I know what's best for you, I truly believe that parenting becomes a whole lot easier and enjoyable if we say, My kid already knows what's best for them. They have their own answers. They have their own journey. My job is to help them find that place of that wisdom, inner wisdom that they have. Our kids are so smart. Everybody, it comes into this world with an inner knowing. We all have our own set of unique talents and skills. And we need to stop wanting our kids to conform to what we believe is their journey. Like, we all have this preset notion of what success is. That's great for you. But we live in a very different world today. And there are so many different ways of being successful today. And success looks different to every person. We just need to get that through our heads first as parents, that success does not have to look like what it looked like for you, your society, your network, like your parents, their parents, your uncles, right? It looks very different these days. And our job as parents is to guide our kids to their own inner wisdom and intuition and not make it conform to us. So the final myth or common parenting mistake is that the more time I spend with my kids, the better off they will be. Now, this might be a controversial one, but so many of us as parents who work and have other responsibilities, other passions, other hobbies, we want to go on vacations. Like, we have our own lives, right? And especially moms with careers that either they love or don't love, it doesn't matter, right? We all have an innate need to make a contribution to this world. And most of us decide to fulfill that need by having jobs. And we have careers. And when we have careers, we always feel torn about the amount of time we have available for our kids. And a lot of times we're rushing. And the part of the guilt that happens is that, if we're not in a good place with our kids and we don't feel close enough to our kids and we don't feel like they're completely open with us and we don't have an authentic relationship. And what I mean by authentic is that I know my kid will for sure come to me if there's something going on. My kid opens up to me really easily. We have a back and forth conversation almost every day. I'm pretty sure that I have visibility into 90% of what's going on in their life. Like, my kids are very open and available with their emotions, and I'm attuned to their emotions, right? Like, I completely trust that I have a very solid foundation with my kids. That's what I call an authentic, child-parent relationship. And so most people believe that the only way you can build that kind of authentic relationship is by spending tons and tons of time with your children. Now, I'm not saying time with your child is not important. Of course it is, but it's probably not as much time as you believe it to be. And it's actually more about the quality of time that you spend with your kids. So as, moms who work maybe 40, 50, 60 hours a week pouring into your career, you might feel totally rushed in the evenings with them and feel like maybe you have one good hour with them. So for that one good hour, right, you don't have to have 3 hours with them to build connection. If you can learn to be fully present for 20 minutes with them within that hour, and then maybe another 40 minutes of like finding ways to connect with them that's meaningful for them, that is 1 hour of quality time wins over like 3 hours of just being there, but not really being there with them, rushing them to activities and things like that, right? So I want to break this idea that it's the quantity of time that matters and not the quality of time, or the more time I spend with my kids, the better off they will be. Yes, every child needs time and attention. Well, every child needs attention and connection. I'm going to rephrase that. And the amount of time you have with them is not always related to the connection that you have with them. You can connect to someone deeply within 5 minutes and not connect with them as deeply even if you have 50 minutes. So how do you connect with your child in 5 minutes? It's by being truly present. Why do so many of you struggle with being present? Because being present means that you have to get into your body. and attune to your senses. A lot of times when I'm like even doing homework with my child, right? I'm sitting next to him and I literally stare at his eyelashes and I stare at his side profile. And I have trained my body and my senses to soak in that moment that I can close my eyes right now and recall what his eyelashes look like. I've like imprinted it into my brain. And this is not because I've got some superhero skills. It's because I have trained my body to feel safe to be in the present moment. A lot of you don't feel safe to be in the present moment because of several reasons. You are hyper vigilant, meaning that you're constantly scanning your environment for other things. If you have gone through trauma, this causes hypervigilance, where you're always scanning your environment for, am I in danger? How do I protect myself? Now, this can sound really extreme, but for people who have been in harm's way and have had, either emotionally attacked, physically attacked, or have had physical harm come to them, this is a very real thing. So because of hypervigilance, you can't be present. Another reason that you don't know how to be present is because you are constantly worrying about what's next, right? You're either worried about the past, worrying about things that have just happened. I could have done this differently. I should have done that. And beating yourself up. Or the third reason is you're in the future. What needs to get done, right? Where do I need to go next? What are all the things on my to-do list? It's thinking about that. And again, the reason for that is micro and macro trauma, that you just cannot be in the present moment. It's also because of overachieving tendencies. These are protection mechanisms not meant to let you be in the present moment. Okay, so that is a deeper conversation that we can have about why we find it difficult to be present. It's really about emotional trauma that's trapped in the body that you are not aware of. And when I say this, almost everybody is like, that's not me. That's not me. And yet so many of us struggle with being present. And the only reason that you can't be present is because your body says it's not safe to be so, because it requires your body to be in the present moment. It requires your senses. And if you're always attuned to outside of you, then it's very hard to do that. And the reason we do that is because we deem it's not safe. And so I hope, I'm going to end it abruptly there, but it's not always the amount of time that you spend with your kids that is important for connection. It's about the quality of time and how present you can be with them. And the more you work on your own healing, the more present you can be, the easier it becomes, the more connected you will feel to your children. That's how this all works. Now, all of this is being covered in my brand new program, The Grounded Parent, which I am so beyond excited about. And I've decided to make a change. I'm going to be making this into a group program with an option to add on coaching, one-on-one coaching. So I've pivoted recently because I've really been feeling into the energy of this program. And there's so much goodness and value that comes out of going through it with others on a group journey towards parenting, because a lot of parenting is done behind closed doors. And a lot of us carry some secrets and shame around, oh my God, if anybody ever found out about this, or I struggle with this, or I think this way. There's a lot of shame that comes with parenting. We want to keep it behind closed doors and don't ever share with people what it is that we're struggling with. And when we come together in a community with a shared purpose of this, I come bearing all my bones, right? Flesh and bones, and others see us and accept us, that is very healing to us as an individual, which then has a ripple effect into how we show up as a human and therefore how we show up as a parent. So I am pivoting and making this into a group program with a ton of value in terms of teaching modules, breathwork practices, and teaching you very real practical strategies on how do I not only heal myself as a parent so I'm not deeply triggered and like fly off the handle with my kids and parenting doesn't cause me so much stress and disconnection. Um, it will teach you very practical skills on how to set boundaries, like how to resolve conflict with my kids when conflicts arise. How do I maintain a sense of safety, peace, and calm so that I don't fly off the handle? So you'll have both like a way to address yourself with what's going on and also to help influence change in your children. Because remember, as I talked about in one of the most common mistakes is that I don't need to change. My children need to do all the changing. That is never a successful strategy for parenting. So if you love this, check out the link in the show notes. I love you guys so much. I would love to hear from you on how you felt about this episode. As always, DM me on Instagram or email me back on what you loved about this episode. All right, take care. Bye.